today's our Bell Let's Talk Day. So I thought it was important to share with you, as the leader of the church, who you see me every day doing stuff, that no, I haven't been okay. And that's okay, because I got good help. I got support where I needed it. And so with that, I want to introduce our speaker this morning. Now, David is a friend of mine. I've known David for almost 20 years. We went to seminary together. I first met him in seminary. I don't know if you remember what was the first thing you said about me. No? So I had longer hair then. Not as long as the hair you made me cut off. But I had longer hair, and it was dyed blonde, red and streaked. And I was at fall gathering. This is like the first weekend you all come together in seminary. And David's running around going, "Did you see? Jesus is here." Jesus is going to school. A little bit. But do you remember what we did at that fall gather? That's how I knew I was meant to be a priest. Was actually that weekend. And I'll tell you that because you know me, I'm a mechanic. I fix things. I do things with my hands, right? A lot of a priest is theoretical, right? And I was always sort of like worried, like, am I going to fit in? Am I doing the right thing? And you got all these worries around. But we found that old stone altar, and we rebuilt it. Yeah. We rebuilt that stone altar. My hands got to work and built the altar of God. It was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And so I think it's fitting that you're here today. I think it's fitting that you're here today to help me and hopefully help all of us understand a little bit better about mental health. Now, David was a priest in the Diocese of Huron and Diocese of Toronto. He is no longer a priest. He's a mental health worker and a crisis worker in Toronto. And he gives his life towards helping people in distress, in need, in mental health crisis. So with that, I'd like to invite David to come up and to speak to us this morning.
Thank you. And can you hear me okay? Yep. Thank you, and thank you, Marty. When I met Marty, he was indeed a long-haired, very long-haired, Jesus-looking guy who really didn't like authority very much. And he's not a long-haired guy anymore. I think he's still a rebel at heart, but he has, like his bishop, become a just authority. It is Robbie Burns Day. I don't know if anyone knows what that means, but I was born in Glasgow, Scotland, and it is Robbie Burns Day today and Burns Night tonight. So I thought I would wear my Scotland scarf, if that's okay with everyone. Thank you to this community for making space during Mental Health Week on Burns Night, a night that remembers something much deeper than poetry. This is my first time speaking in an Anglican church since I was deprived of ministry in 2018. I'm not here to revisit that history. I am here instead to speak about what memory does when it is met with courage instead of fear. Burns Night tonight is about memory. Not nostalgia, not grievance, but memory. The kind that refuses to disappear simply because it makes others uncomfortable. Robert Burns belonged to a people who understood this well. The Scots learned early that power often asks the vulnerable to forget. Forget their language, forget their stories, forget their pain in order to survive. And yet, the songs endured, the poems endured, the truth endured. that shared endurance between peoples across borders is what the Auld Alliance was really about. Not politics, not solidarity. Not politics, but solidarity. And solidarity at its core is this: we will remember you when others would prefer you just disappeared. Mental health struggles do not begin with weakness. They begin in unheld truth, in things that happened too early, too quietly, too often. In families, churches, and institutions, places meant to protect, where harm was minimized, misnamed, or spiritualized away. I know this not only as a former priest, or a crisis worker, or a mental health advocate. I know it as someone who has lived through trauma and then lived through the long aftermath of trying to tell the truth about it. What we often call mental illness is not a failure of faith. It is very often the body and soul refusing to cooperate with silence any longer. Anxiety is memory knocking. Depression is grief with nowhere to go. Anger is pain that was never allowed to speak safely. And when institutions respond to that pain with control instead of care, the wound does not close. It deepens. I once wrote a book called Redemptive Trauma. Some people misunderstood the title. So let me be precise. Let me be theologically precise. Trauma is not redemptive by nature. Violence does not become holy because it happens. Suffering is not a spiritual requirement. God does not need trauma in order to bring about redemption. But, and this matters, when trauma has already occurred, when harm has already been done, redemption refuses to leave the wounded behind. In the Christian story, God does not stand at a distance from suffering, explaining it, justifying it, or demanding gratitude for it. God enters it. Not to baptize violence, but to refuse its final word. The cross does not make suffering good. It makes abandonment impossible. Let me say that again. The cross does not make suffering good. It makes abandonment impossible. When Bonhoeffer said, "When Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die," he was not glorifying pain. He was naming the cost of truth. The death he spoke of was the death of false innocence, the death of cheap grace, the death of belonging purchased by silence. Redemptive trauma is not about finding meaning in pain. It is about discovering that pain does not get to decide who we are, or whether we remain worthy of love, dignity, and belonging. Redemption is not forgetting what happened. Redemption is being believed. It is the slow restoration of agency, the reclaiming of voice. The moment when a person realizes they are no longer required to protect the reputation of the thing that harmed them. This is why truth-telling is so threatening. Because it shifts power. There is a phrase used by theologians and liberation movements alike. You may have heard it before. The long memory of the oppressed. This does not mean people hold grudges. It means they remember what the world asked them to carry alone. That memory is often treated as a problem to be managed. But Scripture tells a different story. God is not allergic to memory. God remembers Hagar in the wilderness. God hears the cry of enslaved Israel. God listens again and again and again to the lament of the Psalms. The prophets were not punished for lying. They were punished for remembering out loud. The church does not lose credibility because people tell the truth about harm. The church loses credibility when it asks people to stay silent for the sake of order. I want to be clear today, tonight. I'm not here to accuse. I'm not here to litigate. I'm not here to rehearse details. I'm here to witness. Witness that people survive things they were never meant to survive alone. Witness that silence harms more than truth ever could. Witness that healing begins when memory is met with care instead of fear. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. warned us that the greatest danger to justice is not open hostility, but the silence of those who prefer order to truth. Archbishop Desmond Tutu taught us that reconciliation without truth is not healing, but merely the postponement of violence. I have been written about. I have spoken publicly. I have been misunderstood on more than one occasion. And still, I am here. Because the opposite of trauma is not happiness. It is connection. So tonight, on Burns Night, during Mental Health Week, on a day when our culture is finally learning how to speak about mental health out loud, in a wonderful church community that has chosen to listen, I want to say this plainly. People do not need to be fixed nearly as much as they need to be remembered. Remembered as whole. Remembered as truthful. Remembered as worthy of care, not because they are strong, but because they are human. Mental health begins to heal when people are no longer asked to disappear parts of themselves in order to belong. Faith becomes credible when it can hold memory without fear. And redemption, real redemption, begins when we stop asking people to forget what shaped them and start walking with them as they tell the truth. The long memory of the oppressed is not a problem to be solved. It is a gift to the church. If, and only if, we are brave enough to receive it. Thank you.
Thank you, David. We're going to take a few moments to transition over to lunch. We'll get everything set up and get the slow cookers and all the food out onto the table. Grab something to eat. I have a copy of David's book here, Redemptive Trauma, Confessions of a Defrocked Priest. You're welcome to take a look at it. David will be available. We'll do a Q&A in the gym after we get a bite to eat. If you'd like to pick this book up, you're welcome. Amazon. Indigo Cambridge have copies on hand in town if you want to get it right away. I will tell you this, it's really good, but it's also raw. All right, so just so you know. All right, so with that, let us transition and let us head in for lunch.